Welcome back to the channel, folks. Today I kind of want to talk to you about this Licitti 2000 watt bring your own battery type box. About a year ago I reviewed their 1000 watt bring your own battery type inverter box. But Licitti has come out with this much, I guess, upgraded, if you want to call it that, battery box. It's got a 2000 watt inverter. It's got a 20 amp MPPT charge controller. The previous 1000 watt only had a 10 amp MPPT, so that was a big downfall of that box. However, this is upgraded to 20 amps, but it's still not that much. But guys, I just want to walk you through why I think, as this setup stands as is, as a bring your own battery, like your own 12 volt 100 amp battery, is not a good deal, and you need to pass on it because it just doesn't make sense, and I'm going to explain why. So this has got a 2000 watt inverter. If you put a 100 amp hour battery in here, most 100 amp hour batteries have a 100 amp BMS. So that means that you can only discharge out of that battery before the BMS cuts in around 1280 watts. Of course, there's some headroom on these batteries that let you typically pull more than 100 amps for a little bit of period of time. On average, let's say you'll get 1300 watts you'll be able to pull out of this battery. This has a 2000 watt inverter, so you're never going to be able to get up to that 2000 watts if you're using a 100 amp hour battery. And this thing is big. It weighs about probably 30 pounds, 25, 30 pounds. It's all aluminum. It's built very well. I don't want to knock it for that. It is built much better than the plastic 1000 watt box, but it just doesn't make sense to me why you would spend almost $480 just on this box, around $70 for shipping. Then you got to have, if you don't have your own battery, you got to buy a battery. The cheapest LiPo 4 100 amp hour battery is, let's say, 190 bucks, 200 bucks. When you start adding all that up, you can go buy a 1000 watt, maybe even a 1500 to 2000 watt power station that's going to give you more outlets. This only has one AC output. You only have one cigarette style charging port, and you have one power delivery and quick charge USB-A port. So you're limited on output ports on this thing. This is only useful, I think, if you have a bunch of batteries laying around that you need to be able to convert to AC juice. I think that would be a good deal then if you have a bunch of batteries, but I would not recommend buying this thing thinking that that it's a better deal, because it's really not. But I think Licitti made this battery box specifically for their 280 amp hour kind of DIY lithium iron phosphate battery kit. That makes sense. That's over 3,500 watt hours worth of capacity that you can put into this box. And the kit that you can get from Licitti, that 280 amp hour kit, fits perfectly in this box. That's a pretty good deal. You're gonna get over 3,500 watt hours off the top of my head. I'm not doing the math, but it's over 3,500 watt hours, 280 amp hours. That starts to make more sense, I think, to get this box over the 1000 watt Licitti box that they still offer. But once you get this thing off, I want to show you the innards of it. So this back cover comes off, and don't lose all these. And then you got a tray down here that's held on with a couple of bolts, and that's what your battery is going to fit on. Okay, and then this tray slides out. It's out of the way. And this is what the battery sits on. It does fit a 100 amp hour battery. I'm going to show you, but I've seen other videos of their 280 amp hour kit. It fits perfectly on this tray. It does come with some really nice 2-gauge cables to connect to your battery. You've got your MPPT charge controller. It's really hard to get in there. Right here, this is your MPPT, and then up top in this void of the box is where all of your inverters are going to be. You've got your shunt to monitor output and input right there. So it's pretty jam-packed in there. There's a lot of stuff going on in there, but it's all wired really well. You have this abrasion resistant outer covering on these cables because it does have to kind of push in here, and you don't want it to rub, obviously. But one of the things that I've seen when installing one of my 100 amp hour batteries is the top of the terminals are just barely clearing the bottom of this shelf right here. that terrifies me. I don't want a short to happen. So if this thing's jostling around, now granted, there is straps that you can strap the battery down pretty tight to this, but those terminal bolts on the batteries are so close to this bottom of the shelf. They're too close for comfort. They do supply these little boots that go over the terminal bolts, but let me show you folks how close and tight the tolerances are when you try to install a regular 100 amp hour battery in this cavity right here. Okay, so here I've got just a standard 100 amp hour, what I'm gonna call a standard cased size 100 amp hour battery. It's not the mini size batteries. This battery's in fact from DJLBERMPW. I don't know, alphabet soup here, but a standard size 100 amp hour battery. And if you get this plate that slides in here, it does have these Velcro mounting holders, which is absolutely critical to use. And if you notice, the negative cable is longer than the positive cable. So I'm gonna put the negative side of the battery to go into the back because that cable is longer. But this fits actually really well on this mounting plate. But we are gonna get it strapped down nice and tight. Okay, so it's on there pretty good. I'm not gonna put these on yet, but I just wanna show you folks how tight the tolerance is from the top of these terminal bolts to this little shelf here. So it just slides in. And you don't have a lot of room. Once you get your actual terminal ring installed, that bolt's gonna go up just a little bit higher. And so you hardly have any room for clearance of those terminal bolts touching this metal plate. So that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So I'm gonna be really careful on this video, but I am gonna go ahead and install these and push this battery in because I know that I'm not gonna be jostling it around anywhere. But I am going to make sure that these boots are definitely covering up the top of that terminal bolt. Okay, so now I'm going to slide this in here. And see, the rubber boot is actually touching this. It is pushing against the bottom of this. See, look at that. I got to kind of push this down to get it underneath it. But I think for what this is, they did a pretty good job with the layout. So you got your main cutoff switch here. We'll go ahead and cut it on. And you've got the smart display here. And right now it's showing 159 amp hours. I did have a 160 amp hour battery in here, but you can go in here and change the settings to your actual amp hours of your battery so it'll be accurate for your discharge. Maybe now the glare will be off on that screen. So it's a nice, pretty bright, colorful LCD screen, and you can go in here to the settings button, and this is where you can change your amp hours on your battery. I just input 160, but you can go in and put 100 amp hours, 280 amp hours, whatever bank you're going to be using. That's what this is going to use to determine your remaining amp hours on the battery. So we can get back out of this. And you do have a battery percentage, of course, percentage marker. You've got these little green and yellow and red bars. You've got your time remaining till that battery is completely depleted. But right now, my battery's sitting at 14.2 volts. And with just the system on, just these lights running and whatnot, it's pulling 2 watts. And we can cut the AC on here with this mechanical button. You got a little light, and that's going to actually start to use, not too bad, around 6 watts to have that inverter on in idle mode. And then here's a closer view of your USB ports. And these are individually switched, so you can turn this off so it's not using any power. Now this is always going to be on. And then you have these 2 big 50 amp Anderson type power pole connectors. The top one is going to be your 50 amp input to charge or 50 amp output. So that's one of the good things about these boxes is that you can get 50 amps worth of DC output through that Anderson connection right there. The bottom yellow one is going to be your 20 amp solar input. Now what you can do, you can plug in 20 amps worth of solar here, and you can plug in a separate, an outside solar charge controller into this 50 amp input and get more solar. But as this box sits right now with the solar charger built in, you can only get 20 amps or up to 55 volts off of this 20 amp solar input. But again, you can connect something like a separate charge controller and hook it up to this top 50 amp input and get additional solar if you want. And then your one lonely AC output. But while we have this here, let's go ahead and check the voltage, see if it's 110 or 120. And with no load, we're sitting at 123.5 volts. So let's plug in a little load to it with some kind of splitter extension and measure it once we get a little bit of a load put on this thing to see if it maintains at least 120 volts. All right, so I got my little Amazon Basics 500 watt space heater. I got a little splitter installed here. So let's see what we get out of it. Okay, and I'll pull you in closer, but this is showing we are pulling, it's gonna climb up, we're 420 watts now, 416, and we're still maintaining 122 volts. Of course, 60 hertz. Okay, this is nothing for it. Let me get a bigger space heater. Okay, now I got a 1500 watt space heater. Let's see what happens with this. Cut it on max. Down to 115 volts, 114 volts, 113, 110. We're still going down. Okay, going back up now. This is pulling 1530 watts right now. So the battery in this is actually overperforming. It's going over its 100 amp continuous rating, but it's not touching the 2000 watt capacity of the actual inverter in the box. So it looks like we're going to settle down at around 110 volts. And you can see here, that is pulling 1421 watts, 109.4 volts. So the battery that I have in here is actually overperforming right now, to be honest with you, because it's only rated at 100 amp discharge. So it's, again, like I said, a lot of these batteries have a little headroom built into them to allow you to discharge more than those 100 amps, which is what's happening right now. That's why I'm able to get 1500-ish watts being discharged out of that battery, but it's not touching the capacity of this actual 2000 watt box. I still got 500 more watts to go before I get to the max of this Licitti power box. Now they do claim that this is a pure sine inverter too, so let's check the sine wave on this. Okay, so pulling 1432 watts. There's your sine wave. So not too bad. I would be pretty comfortable running sensitive-ish electronics off of this because that sine wave looks pretty clean. I wouldn't be too concerned about plugging in a TV or a computer to this thing. And the other little feature this thing has, it does have a Bluetooth, and it pulls up. We're going to click on it. And you got to remember, I haven't reset this amp hour. This is not, this 152 amp hours remaining is for my other battery, so I would need to go in and change it to 100 amp hours for this to be truly accurate, but it's showing the voltage of the battery at 11.8. I'm currently pulling 123.89 amps out of that battery, 1464 watts, and the time remaining showing an hour and 13 minutes, but that again is not accurate because this thinks it's a 160 amp hour battery, but that's pretty much it that you get for the app, but you do have some history on it if you want to go in and look to see previous usage. And you got some settings where you can change, again, your capacity alarm. I've got mine set for 5 amp hours. Overall, I mean, the app works. It's fine, but I'm gonna get this heater cut off because it's hot in here. So I'm gonna stand by what I said in the beginning of this video, where I don't think it's worth it to buy this if you are gonna go buy a LiPo4 battery or a lead acid battery or a gel battery. This will accept any kind of battery you have as long as it fits inside this box. I just don't think that the price is worth it if you're going to be doing that, because you're not going to be able to utilize the full 2,000 watts that this inverter is capable of. I think where this would shine, where it makes more sense, is to buy this and then down the road, or at the same time, whatever, get the 280 amp hour lithium iron phosphate kit. I'm hoping I'm going to get that so I can show you folks how to build it. I've never built my own LiPo4 battery. And if I do get one, I'll show you how to build it, and then I'll put it in this box, because that's when I think this makes more sense. If you have a lot of batteries laying around, I still recommend the 1,000 watt Licitti power box. I think that just makes more sense. It's lighter, it's much smaller. This thing is big. I mean, for only 1,280 watt hour capacity, this is a big unit. That's why I don't think it makes sense. The 1,000 watt box makes a little bit more sense. It's much lighter. So guys, stay tuned, because I'm hoping to be able to show you how to build your own LiPo4 pack and how it fits in here, because I think that is going to be the best solution for these little DIY bring your own battery boxes. But gang, until next time, we will see you soon. Take care.